Good morning, everyone.
Morning, ma'am.
Good morning, ma'am.
Okay. So I can see only 42 students still have joined. So in the last lecture, we have started with the concepts of groups. Yes, anybody wanted to say something?
No, ma'am.
In the last lecture, we have started with the concepts of groups, where we have discussed about the classes and objects, and we have discussed about encapsulation. Some of the properties or the characteristics we have discussed. Okay, so let me revise it fast. See, whenever now, whatever the kind of program you wanted to write, for every program you will try to write it in with respect to, or every program you will convert it with respect to this object oriented concept. Now whenever it is told to you, like whatever the programs you have learned in C, if I am telling you to convert that in C++, what does that mean? Let me know if the PPT is visible to you. Is the PPT visible, students?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so whenever, if suppose any particular program you wanted to write it with the OOPS concept, that means before writing that program, you should understand how many objects are there in that particular program, or how many objects are needed. Why do we have to identify the objects? Because if we'll identify the objects, it becomes easier for us to understand the program. Because every object will have its own properties, will have its own behavior. Properties मतलब क्या, जो भी attributes है. Like if you are talking about object as a student, or if you are talking about object as a car, or any particular thing in real life, whatever you have, anything you can consider, any entity you can consider as an object. Like even if you're talking as a, even if you're talking about the spoon can also become one object, and I can write a program for that particular spoon also. Spoon, now if I'm talking about a spoon, I have to identify what are the characteristics that spoon is having. So the characteristic of the spoon is to hold something. Okay, and you can use that particular spoon for eating something, or you can use it for just putting salt or paper, or uh, chili powder into your curries and gravies, or you can make use of a spoon for doing some kind of a drawing, or for making some objects, or making something else. So these are the different properties, you can say, or you can say that these are the different behaviors that spoon is having. If I'm talking about a little bit of different concept, I can consider a fork. Now, when you're talking about a fork, now fork, sorry. Just a minute, student. Okay, so when we are talking about fork as an object, now what are properties it is having? The properties of a fork are how many number of prongs it is having. Every fork, some of the forks may have only 3 prongs, some of the forks may have 4 prongs. Prongs matlab, I hope all of you know what is that prongs in a fork. Then,
Yes, ma'am.
then the size of that particular fork, and also you need to determine what material that fork is made up of, whether it is of a plastic or whether it is of a metal, because we have a fork of a plastic, we have a fork of a metal also. Right. Now, when we are talking, these are all called as the properties of a fork, which you don't have much in case of a spoon, but in fork you have more. Like fork can be identified with the number of prongs, its size, and the material. Now, if you're talking about a behavior or the function of a fork, fork can be used for shredding, or it can be used for squashing something, or it can be used to make certain design patterns, or simply to eat noodles or anything else you wanted to eat with a fork. So these are the properties, behavior or the functions that are related to your fork. So like this, you should be able to identify every object with its properties and the behavior or the functions. If you are able to identify this, what will happen with that? Then it becomes easier for you to write the program or divide the program with respect to, or make your program specific with respect to that object. That's why whenever you wanted to convert any of your procedural or structure oriented program into the object oriented, first of all, the first thing that you will be doing is you will be identifying the objects. Okay, then next thing that I have told you is about the classes. Now what do you mean by a class? Class means a particular group that you wanted to make, inside which you can define your objects, or inside which you can write the properties of your you can write the functioning of your objects. So you have to identify what is that, what is a class.
Hello, ma'am. You're on mute.
Now that class should be, when you are making a class, the class should be such that where you can define the different functions of an object. Like suppose I have told you yesterday, like if I am talking about a day before yesterday when we had a lecture, I have told you that when you are talking about like suppose if you're talking about a person can be a student, person can be an employee, person can be a worker, and each one of this category of a person have their own behavior and their own properties. Yes or no?
Yes, ma'am.
But all of them belong to one particular type. That is what a person. A student is a person, a worker is a person, an employee is also a person. So when sometimes what happens, like every person will have some common features. Like see, even if when I'm talking about a worker, or if I'm talking about a student, or if I'm talking about the employee, all of them will have a name. Yes or no?
Yes, ma'am.
So that means what, name is a common property that you have for all of them, and all of them belong to a major category. All of them belong to a major category, which is what called as a person. So what I can do, I can create a class called as person, and in that then I can have a different object for a student, or for employee, or for a worker. Yes or no?
Yes, ma'am.
So I can have a different functions for each one of them. Okay. So though their functions are different, but they may have certain common properties, like name they may have, or maybe certain other property you may have which is common. So that I can define everything inside a class. Then another property that we have discussed about your object oriented programming is what, okay, before going to that, you should also remember that the class construct provides a template or a blueprint for creation of your objects. Actually, classes will help you to define the blueprint, or will help you to give the blueprint or a template. Means it gives a clear idea about how many objects you will have in that particular class. As I said, when you're talking about a person, with that person you easily identify that whatever the kind of objects you have, all will be belonging to the class person, but they will be having different properties and they will be having different functions. Then the next property that we have discussed is about abstraction. Abstraction means what? Abstraction is nothing but what? You just concentrate on the important topics, or you just concentrate on whatever is important to you and just ignore anything else. Okay, like when you have your final exam, if suppose you have not at all studied anything, your aim is to at least study whatever the important topics are, and you just ignore the things which are having less marks, or the things which are not that much important, or the things that you feel that this will not come in your exam. So that is what you call it as abstraction. You are not that is what extract only the relevant properties of the uh, real world, which offer developing a or you can simply say the real world, developing a class while ignoring the inessential things in your program. Then next we have discussed about the encapsulation. Encapsulation, in simple terms, you can remember it as, encapsulation is nothing but what? Wrapping up of your data. That is, see, normally what you do in C program, you are writing a function. Now, for the particular function, when you are writing a function, how you define a function in your C program? Yes, students? How you define the functions? Yes, anyone, student? Yes?
Name of, using the name of function, and then we put a bracket and write. Then we write the properties.
What you do, you write the name of the function, and then you open the brackets, you declare whatever the variables you require for that function. Yes?
Yes, ma'am.
And then you write the operation that you wanted to perform in that function.
Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
now when you are doing this, means what? The variables which you are declaring it inside the function, that variables are part of that particular function, or they are the member of that particular function. Right? That is what you are doing. For the function, you are wrapping off a simple variables which are required for that particular function. Similarly, when we are writing an object-oriented concept, what we'll be doing, we are writing one class, and inside that class, we will be wrapping up of all the variables, objects, and we will write the methods or the functions required on that particular object. So that is what called as your wrapping up of data, or it is what called as your encapsulation, which we will, when I'll show you one single program, you will understand it more clearly. Now, next important property that you have about OOPS is information hiding. Information hiding, by the name itself, you can identify it as what? It will be something which is helping you out to hide some kind of a data. So what it says, it hides and protects essential information of the class from the outside functions through a control interface. Means information hiding is one of the most important property you have in object oriented programming, because see, sometimes what happens like like as I said, see,
Ma'am,
when you
your
are
screen
using,
is not visible.
the screen is not shared. I have shared it.
You had shared, ma'am. It got unshared
Okay,
few
okay.
minutes ago.
Just check it. Let me know if it is visible now.
Yes, ma'am, it is visible.
Okay. Now,
Yes,
what
ma'am.
is information hiding? See, now, whenever you are using any app in your mobile, you are using so many apps in your mobile. Do you know how the program is written for that particular app?
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am.
Or is the program visible to you? No.
No, ma'am.
Because it is not necessary for you to know what the program is written for that particular application, right? Or any software, whenever you are using any particular software, for that software also, it's not necessary to know what kind of a program is being written. Somebody might have written the program for it, right? But we are not aware, or we are not interested into that program, because right now we are not the programmer. If I am a programmer, I would like to know what exactly the program is, or if I wanted to add some extra features into it, or if I wanted to make a version of that version of a particular software, then I may wanted to know the program. But other than that, if I am a novice person, or if I am not at all from IT background, I definitely will not be interested in any kind of a code that is required to develop a particular app or any software, right? Because even if I have that particular code, and if I am from non IT background, I will not understand one single line of that particular code, right? So that means you should be able to write a program in such a way that you will be able to give only the interface to the user. The user will be working only on the interface, and the code is not visible to that particular person. See, like अभी C program तुम लोग लिख रहे हो. Now, if you wanted to execute that program, that means what? तुम्हें turbo C use करना है, and then you have to execute that particular program. Without using turbo C++, without using turbo C or any online compiler, will I be able to execute my C program?
No, we
Ma'am.
have to convert it into low-level
No.
language.
Yes, for that, you, in the simple terms, if I am talking about this, I will not be able to execute my program without turbo C or without any online compiler. I need the compiler to execute it, or otherwise I have to make exe file of it, and then I have to execute it. But even after doing that, I don't have any interface. कुछ और interface है तुम लोग बना रहे हो क्या? Are you making any interface with which the code is getting executed? और the कुछ screen में display होता है, ऐसा कुछ कर रहे हो क्या? No.
No, ma'am.
You are not doing anything with which your code will be visible. So what your object oriented programming does, now though we are using turbo C++ only for executing this C++ program, but what happens now when you are using this, it gives you some feasibility that some of the code, not everything, you can hide it from the class that you are making, right? I can have multiple classes in one program, or I can write certain functions outside that particular class. मैं जब ऐसा करती हूँ तो क्या होता है, certain features which I don't wanted to share it with anybody else. Maybe suppose now, for example, I am creating one particular application for all of you. Like suppose defaulters का I am creating one application. I wanted to design one software where with which it becomes easier for me to calculate the defaulters. ऐसा मुझे बनाना है. Now I am making it for the whole class. I am making it for FY class. Now when I am making it, what I wanted to do, I just wanted to enter the number of lectures all of you have attended. Okay, and at the end of the month I should be able to get the defaulters. Right now I don't wanted to display what kind of actions that is being taken on that particular defaulters, for which I have written a particular code. So what I can do, though I have defined this class FIIT in which I have defined a particular object called as defaulter, and I have written some function which helps me out to calculate the defaulters at the end of the month. But I don't wanted to show you another method which I have defined only for those who are there in defaulters, and that is what the action taken on defaulters. That is another method I have. Are you getting, student? But the action taken will also be a part of FYIT class, because I am taking that action only on that class only, because I am calculating the defaulters of that class. So that is what called as your information hiding. Hope this is clear to everyone.
Yes, ma'am.
So here the examples are given of your abstractions and all. See, like when you're talking about a car, the car dealer views a car from selling features point of view, where he will talk about price, length of warranty, color, and all the other features. But if suppose there is any mechanic or if there is any mechanical engineer, he will view a car from the system maintenance standpoint. So he will check the size of the oil filter, type of spark plugs, or the type of engine that is being used in that particular car. So that all details will be checked by the mechanical engineer. So these are the things which are related to each person. See, the salesperson don't have to give every time all these details to all the customers, because everybody will not understand the in detail information about that car. Some of them, and some of them will be more interested, some of them will be least interested. So among, with respect to the interest of that particular customer, the seller will be giving you the information. Okay. Now for information hiding, here the example is given is of radio. See, now what happens when you're talking about a radio, or suppose you wanted to place your, whenever you wanted to tune to or start your radio, actually there is an antenna which is placed on your car or on the roof of your house, right? So the interface consists of controls and power and antenna connectors. Okay, so only that things are visible to you. So interface means what? You are able to see the antenna connectors. You are able to see some wires connect to, if there is any wire connectivity through the antennas, you will be able to see that wires and how you are connecting it to that particular antenna. That interface only you are able to see. The details of how it works, that is not known to you. Or you also don't have to need to learn about all the electronics related to that radio signals and radio frequencies, how it is being captured and all, with what kind of a wavelength that is being used, that you are least interested. So that is what called as your information hiding.
Hello, ma'am.
Yes.
Ma'am, I had a doubt about the that object wala part. You told that we have to define object and class. So what kinds of programs are we going to practice in C? Like same programs like find an prime number, or what is find Fibonacci series and all, or we have different programs.
It will be a different programs. You can see, I just gave you an example, right? Like even if you wanted to convert that C programs into C++, that is also possible, क्योंकि तुम्हें सिर्फ वो प्रोग्राम्स का फीचर्स चेंज करना है. इट इज द, see, main logic will be same. What is the logic required to find the prime number or to get the Fibonacci series? That logic will be same, but we can make it as a object oriented. We can write it in terms of object oriented concepts. That is what I told you. You few programs you may have, like few programs which you have did in your C, that you will have, but other than that we have a separate programs where you will be learning all these OOPS concepts. So that's why I have not started with the practicals, because we have to finish with this first chapter, so that at least once you will get an idea about all these characteristics, then it becomes easier for you to understand. अगर directly मैंने आज practical start किया होता, and if I'll tell you the program, it will be difficult for you to understand. मतलब Maybe you will, some of you will understand also, but then C is completely different and C++ different है, तो थोड़ा वो confusion नहीं हो, इसके लिए I am taking this part, and then next week I will start with your practicals.
Okay.
Now next we have another feature of your OOPS is, now this feature is not given in the book, modularity. Modularity is the new concept that is being added. New matlab it was there already, but it was not defined properly in the old books of in the OOPS. But now you can also have it as a one of the feature or the property, as modularity means what, dividing an object into smaller pieces, or you can also call it as you can divide that object into modules, so that object the object is easier to understand and manipulate. Like if suppose you have a very, whenever you have a very vast kind of a object, where that object is having so many properties and so many functionalities, then it is very difficult for that object for a particular person to write that different functions and the properties of that particular object. So what you can do, you can divide it into smaller parts, which is called as your modules. Like here the example is given, like your car can be decomposed into subsystem, that is depending upon the cooling system and ignition system. When you're talking about a cooling system of the car, you will talk about the radiator, thermostatistics and water pump. But when you're talking about the ignition system, you talk about the battery, you talk about the starter motor, and you talk about the spark plugs. Now next you have is a hierarchy. Instead of hierarchy, you term this as inheritance. This can be called as the concept called as a inheritance. What do you mean by inheritance or a hierarchy? Hierarchy is nothing but what, ranking or ordering of objects based on some relationship between them. You have to create some relationship between the different objects. Like when you're saying when you are talking about any particular object, how that object is related to anyone else, any other objects in the same class. Like see here, a company hierarchy helps employees understand the company and their position within it. Like always you will have CEO at the top of all the employees of the company. CEO of the company is always the top position in that particular organization. Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Below that CEO, you may have managing director, you may have, or anything else. What are the other higher positions you have? Joint director, managing director, that all positions you have. Below that, you may have managers. Then you have the associate programmers or associate engineers, then assistant engineers. Then you will be having a trainees or the uh, normal employees of your organization. Okay, so this is what called as a hierarchy. If you wanted to achieve the highest post in your organization, you always have to start from the trainee position. So from trainee, you will go to the one level up to the assistant engineer position. From assistant, you will be going to associate. From associate, you will be becoming you will be becoming a project leader or something like that. And finally you will be moving to project manager, and then to any other higher post that you have in the organization. So whenever you are creating the objects, all the object, if you have this kind of objects, you should be able to create the hierarchy and the relationship between each one of that objects, so that it becomes easier to understand a very complex system also. Now these hierarchies can be studied properly in terms of the characteristic called as inheritance. And there are various types of inheritance used in your C++ that we will discuss in inheritance chapter. But inheritance is another characteristic that you have in OOPS concept. What do you mean by inheritance? Like whenever you are talking about inheritance means whatever the type of object you have, you will see whether this object can be further classified. Like if I am talking about the vehicle is one of the object. Yes or no? But this vehicle can be classified as motorcycle, it can be classified as car, it can be classified as truck. And then again, each one of this may have their own subcategory. Like if I am talking about a car, I may have SUV car, or I may have a sedan cars, or I may have any other type of a cars. If I am talking about a truck, I may have a lorry truck, I may have any other type of a trucks that you have. Understood? Yes, students?
Yes, ma'am.
So always remember that object is always an instance of a class. Whichever class you will define, the object should be an instance of it. Okay, so remember, inheritance is the mechanism which is used to provide the power of reusability and extensibility. Like how you can extend one particular object. Reusable, why you are saying reusable? Like when I am saying class person. From class person, I can have the categories as employee, student, and worker. Now all of them share the same property called as name, because each one of them will have one name. So what I'll be doing, I'll be using this name characteristic for all of them. So there is no need to define this name again and again for each one of the object. You can define it in the class person itself, and then it can be reused for, मतलब एक ही variable I will declare one name variable in the top inside my class, and that name variable I can use it for student also, I can use it for worker also, and I can use it for employee also. So inheritance is the process by which one object can acquire the properties of another object. Please remember this. Inheritance is the process by which one object can acquire the properties of another object. Like normally when we are talking about inheritance, we talk about the parent and the child relationship. See how this parent and child relationship you have. From a child always inherits some of the characteristic from the parent, and they have their own characteristics also. Like if suppose the parent is good in singing, maybe any one of his child may also be good in singing. So that means what? That singing property is inherited from the parent. Yes or no? Yes or no, student?
Yes.
Now, along with singing, that kid may be good in dancing also. But the parent is not aware about the dance, or he is not good in dancing. But the kid is good in dancing also, and he is good in singing also. So that means what happens now? Some of the properties you are inheriting. Inheriting मतलब क्या कर रहे हो तुम लोग? Reuse कर रहे हो. जो भी parent का है, that same thing you are also having it, and along with that you have your own features also. Your own extra characteristics are also there. When you have this kind of relationship, ये हम लोग प्रोग्राम में भी ऐसे ही लिखेंगे. When we'll write it in a program, if you have any object and its sub object having this kind of a relationship, it is what called as the inheritance that you have implemented in your program. When we will discuss now, we will have certain situations where by reading the situation you will understand that for this kind of a program you need to implement the concept of inheritance in your program. Not every program will have the inheritance, but certain programs where there is this kind of relationship is there, and where the properties are being shared among the parent and the child, there you will implement the inheritance concept. Clear? Yes, students.
Yes.
So here actually what happens, your parent class जो भी है, whatever the parent class that you have, that parent class is always called as a super class. And the subclasses that you have, like from the parent, whichever the subclasses that you have inherited, they are called as the derived classes, because they are derived from the parent class, so they are called as the derived classes, or they are also called as the subclasses. And your parent class is called as the base class or super class, and the derived classes are called as, sorry, or the classes which will derive it from the parent class, they are called as the derived classes or subclasses. So when you are talking about encapsulation and information hiding, data and functions are said to be encapsulated into a single entity, which is called as class. So data is concealed within a class so that it cannot be accessed mistakenly by functions outside the class. That is what you will be doing. You will be implementing abstraction also and information hiding also. Then inheritance, just now I have told you about the inheritance. Now the next concept is we will learn about the polymorphism. What is polymorphism? Now what do you mean by poly?
Many.
Poly means what? Many. Okay. See here inheritance, some basic things I have given. The process of creating new classes called as derived class from existing classes. That existing classes are also called as existing class, or your parent class is also called as a base class. Okay, which creates the hierarchy of parent classes and child classes. The child classes inherits the attributes and the behavior of the parent class. Okay, now what is polymorphism? Polymorphism means many. Poly means what? Many. So your object can have many properties, or it can have many forms. Instead of properties, you can say that it can have many forms. Okay. In OOPS, it is the ability to redefine the methods for your derived classes. That is what called as your polymorphism. Or you can say that the ability to process your objects differently depending upon their data types or depending upon the class in which they are used. Okay. Like you can say that polymorphism means what? There is the same thing, but it exists in two different forms. So it is actually, in short, you can say that the ability to call different functions by just using one type of a function call. Okay, like suppose now, uh, normally you use the plus sign for doing the addition of two numbers. Yes or no?
Yes, ma'am.
Plus sign in your program normally you do to perform addition of two numbers, but this plus sign can also be used to perform the concatenation of two different strings,
Yes.
right? So that means what? I have only one single object, that is plus sign, but I am using it in two different forms. Okay, one where I am doing the addition and the other one where I am doing the concatenation. So that is what called as polymorphism. When you are able to perform, when you are able to write the programs in that way, it is what called as you have implemented polymorphism. Or another example is which we will see in our program also. This program we will see. Like suppose if I am telling you about write a program to calculate the areas of different shapes. What I am saying, write a program to calculate the areas of different shapes. Now what all shapes you know, or which all shapes ka area you can calculate? Yes students,
Circle, square, rectangle.
you can calculate the area of a circle, which is a type of a shape. You can calculate the area of triangle, which is also a type of a shape. Yes or no?
Yes.
You can also calculate the area of square, area of rectangle. Now all these are belonging to one single class, that is shape. So I can define a class called as shape. But in that class I have different objects. Like area, when I am writing area function. Now area function can be a common one for all these shapes. Area See, area function I'll be using for triangle also, area function I'm using for square also, area function I'm using it for rectangle also. But when I am using it, what happens there? When I am using this area function, what happens? The shape का जो formula है, sorry, area calculate करने का formula है, that is also changing. Yes or no?
Yes.
So that is what called as your polymorphism. You have one object, but that object you are representing it in different forms or many forms. So which gives the different meanings to the same thing. So how exactly your class, just a minute. Okay, now one more property that is remaining, it's not given over here. That property you have after the polymorphism, before going to this class concept, we will discuss that another property of your object oriented language is about the message passing. You have another property as message passing. Now what is this message passing? Or and one more you have, that is what called as data binding. Or you can call it as data hiding. So there are two types of data binding. You have late binding and early binding. Late binding and early binding, what do you mean by that? Like when you execute, when you write a particular program, sometimes what happens, like suppose I am writing a program, to perform the addition of two numbers. And I am writing a program where to do the addition of two numbers, I am giving values to my variables. I will write a is equal to 5, b is equal to 10, and in a code I will simply write c is equal to a plus b, and I will simply write then printf c. When I am writing this is what called as your early binding. Means the values to perform a particular operation, the values are known to your program at the time of execution. Are you getting, students? See, मुझे अगर a and b का addition करना है, I should know the values of a and b, and the values are given in your program itself. So if the values are known in the program itself, it is what called as your early binding. Yes, students. Yes or no?
Yes, ma'am.
अभी इसमें क्या होगा? I will be every time I will be able to do addition of only whatever the numbers I have given. Whatever the value I have given. अगर मैंने values a का value 3 दिया है, b का value 5 दिया है, every time whenever I'll execute the program, I will get the same addition. Or will I be able to get the different addition?
Same.
Same, because the values are not changing. So if suppose I want the addition of any numbers to be done, what all changes I need to do in my program? What changes I need to do in my program? If I want any number, any user specific number to be entered, sorry, any user specific number to be added, then what I should do? Yes, students.
Yes, ma'am.
What you will be doing?
We should not put the values in the program.
You should.
Not put the values in the program. We should put after the program.
Okay, I will not. Then that means I should not put the values in the program. But what I should do?
We should just instruct the user to type the numbers and then we have to allot them in a particular variable.
Yes, you need to ask the user to enter the numbers in. Yes. And whatever the number the user will enter, you have to scan that number and then you will be performing the addition of that. Yes or no?
Yes, ma'am.
So in this case, what happens? The numbers are not known. Your operation will not be performed. That addition will not be performed until and unless the number is given by the user. That means some user interaction is needed for this particular program.
Yes, ma'am.
And that interaction depends upon what? That interaction, what it says? It says that user interaction, what it says, until and unless you will provide the number, the addition cannot be performed or your program cannot be executed. So for that, you will be compiling your program, and after compiling your program you are providing the numbers. Your program will halt for user to enter certain numbers. When the user enters the number, then only the addition will be performed. So this kind of behavior is what called as late binding. Late binding means what? At runtime, whatever the values you are providing, based on that values, the operation is performed. So that is what called as late binding. So these are the two important concepts again you have, that is early binding and late binding in your C++ concepts, object-oriented concepts. And the last one you have is message passing. What do you mean by message passing? Like, see, now we have discussed about classes and object. Now, when we are talking about this classes and object, what happen? I may have multiple objects for same class, and sometimes I may wanted to pass the information which is there with one object, that I may wanted to pass to another object. So that is what, when you are doing that, like the name which you are sharing with the name which is common with your class person, the name which is a common attribute that you have for person, for sorry, for student, employee and worker, that I am sharing with everyone else, and then I am getting the information like what kind of a name I have for of an employee, what name I have for a student, and what name I have for a worker. So that is what called as your message passing. Okay. So these are the characteristics that you have. So remember, whenever it is asked to you, like what are the OOPS characteristics you have, or what are the OOPS concepts you have. So in that, the first one you have objects, then you have classes, then you have data abstraction, encapsulation, then what else you have? Information hiding you have, then you have inheritance, polymorphism, data binding, and message passing. Clear everyone with this?
Yes.
Now we will see how exactly a class can be written. A class construct. How we normally write a class. So actually in a class, what you need to write, class construct actually allows the definition of specific objects with defined attributes and their behavior. Attributes matlab जो भी properties you wanted to write, and behavior is nothing but what? The functions that you wanted to write for that particular object. So now, when you are talking about the classes are language constructs that allow the definition and creation of objects of the same type. So what your class is doing, a class uses a variable to define data fields and functions to define the behavior. Additionally, a class provides a specific type of function which is known as a constructor, that we will see later. Constructor हम लोग अभी नहीं, otherwise it will be you will get confused. See, now what exactly a class is doing? Class describes a set of objects with same behavior. Okay, so you may create a car class to represent the cars as object. So to define this class, you must specify the behavior by providing implementation for the member functions and by defining the data members for the object. See, now see this how I have written. Class, you have a circle, inside which here one public is written, that I'll tell you what it is, what do you mean by that public and all. And then here one variable is required. Now this variable, when you are declaring it inside the class, this is what called as your data field. Okay, this is what called as your data field, or it is called as a members radius. When you are defining any variable inside the class, it is what called as a member of a class. member or member variable also it can be called. Forget about this in between ka part. Then below here one function is written. This is how your functions are normally written, right? Double get area, right? Now so when you are writing this function, this is what called as your they are called as in class. With respect to class, they are called as member functions, or they are called as methods of your class. Are you getting? So till now in C, you have always in a program, you normally whatever the variables you write, you call them as a variable. Here, they can be termed as data members or member variables. Okay, and the functions will be called as a methods or member functions. Is this clear? Yes, students.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, once you know how a class can be written, the second thing is you should know how the object can be defined. So, object is almost anything with the properties like name, properties, and operations. Okay, so the ability to act upon receiving a particular message, which is being called as a function or which is being called by another function or another object. So you have basic message type as directive to object to perform an action or request to object to change one of its properties. So when you're talking about the object, you should be able to write the function, write the objects with respect to their behavior and function, behavior and properties. Let me show you one simple example for this one now. See, this is what the basic structure of your class. You remember only the structure. Now, Abhi, see, whatever the structure I am telling you, all of you have to remember this because her program ke liye, for every program you will be writing this kind of a structure only. Only the thing is your class name will change, your variables will change, your functions will change, but the structure will remain same. Whenever we are writing any program with respect to the class concept, your structure is like this. What is the structure? The first thing that you will write is, you will write the keyword class followed by the name of the class. Means कौन सा class create करना है तुम्हें. You will write the name of the class. Open the curly bracket. Now here you have, this is this public which you are able to see, public and private. These two are called as your access specifiers. Access specifier means what? Inside the class, whatever you are writing, whether you want to give the access of that to everyone or whether you wanted to hide that access, because we have learned about information hiding. So information hiding, what it says, how you will implement the information hiding. What we have learned in information hiding, you don't wanted to give all the data to everyone. Some of the data you wanted to hide from some kind of a people, and some of the data you may wanted to share it with everyone. So how that can be achieved in your programming? So to achieve that, we have this access specifiers which is called as public and private. So how it is written? It is written as private and then colon, or otherwise it is written as public and colon. It is not necessary to write both. For some of the programs you may have to write both. For some of the programs you may write only public, or for some of the programs you may write only private. By default, if you will not write any one of this, public भी नहीं लिखा, private भी नहीं लिखा. By default, it is private only. If you are not writing anything, it will consider it as private. Are you getting, students?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I think your one lecture time is over. So we'll stop here, and in the next lecture we'll continue with this at 12:40.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, thank you everyone, and join at 12:40.
Okay.